With Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Colvin. The licensing authority met this morning. A show cause hearing for the planned Oceans 10 at the former site of the Prodigal Son, Island Merchant, and more recently Black Spot was up for discussion today. It appears after this morning's hearing that the small restaurant will remain empty for some time.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. David Nunheimer representing the applicant. For a number of reasons that we'd like to withdraw that application as well, that we will not be availing ourselves of that location. It began because of the fire at the previous location and then became more complicated with the landlord, so we'll continue to operate where we are at the Hyannis Anglers Club and not be leasing the property at this.
Okay, so there'll be no license at this establishment.
That's correct. Mr. Scali's shaking his head.
Well,
Mr. Scali.
I'm a bit confused because we didn't have this conversation in the office. So the location we're at Ocean Street is closed at 10 Ocean?
It never opened.
Never opened. So there's no one in there. It's not going to be you at all.
It's vacant, absolutely.
And so the other location at the Anglers, we have a problem there because we asked you to come in and apply for a DBA change on that, so you have the Anglers and Oceans downstairs, and that never came in.
And I just finished with Attorney Pizzuti the revisions to the lease that the board that had been requested.
Okay.
We also so that will be submitted today, hopefully, with the signatures.
Following discussion of the end of Oceans 10, that restaurateur's other properties were also called into question by the authority.
There'll be one license for both of those establishments, Mr. Scali, both of those upstairs, downstairs?
Well, I guess originally it was a club license and you all transferred it to a restaurant license. Now the club is upstairs and the restaurant's downstairs. They were running both under one license, under a restaurant license for both the club and the restaurant downstairs, which is fine. But they just need to change the name on it so there's both the Anglers Club and the Oceans name on the one license. And then the new manager not being Mr. Green.
And then that's permissible.
Moving on, work is progressing at Harry's at the Depot at the former site of Club 477 on Willow Street. The authority discussed a request for Keno at the establishment. That discussion also continued as licensing authority members had questions about the amount of time people have been working on the new restaurant and bar.
If we do not object, there's nothing I think we have to do. If we do object, we have to apply for a hearing before the MSLC after giving the applicant an opportunity for a hearing. Any objections to Keno going into the depot?
No objections on my part.
No objections? No objections? No action needs to be taken then. If we don't notify them, then they...
I have a question before we go into that. We just gave permission to have a Keno license. Hasn't yet opened, as I recall.
No, it has not.
He's got Keno, but he doesn't have food.
Doesn't have a kitchen yet.
They are spending a lot more time in getting the place ready than they had ever anticipated, which is the norm, I guess. Once they started pulling the place apart, the place is very old, so they're still working on it.
Then authority members discussed an open meeting law violation decision from the Attorney General's office. The violation had taken place in neighboring Yarmouth.
The premise is that you can't conduct the public's business behind closed doors of any type. You can't make phone calls and discuss things with a quorum of the board. You can't do emails. You can't write letters, smoke signals. That's pretty standard in the open meeting law. If you can talk to anybody about anything, but if you're making a decision or discussing a proposal for something that's coming before the board, then and you do that in a non-public setting of any type, you're at risk.
Don't you have to have a multiple-member board, more than one involved? If I talk to Marty on the telephone, by email, whatever.
That's a majority then. That's a quorum.
Well, it depends on what you're talking about.
Okay.
So, I mean, only if you're talking about something that it has to be decided by the board. I mean, you can certainly talk to Marty or anybody else. That's not illegal. But if you're deciding the public's business in that discussion, then that puts you at risk.
Well, you know, I found this was really broad. Here's what I got from this complaint. The chairman of this committee, which I believe was the Removal Policy and Procedure Committee in Yarmouth, which is appointed by the moderator, the chairman sent out a draft copy of proposed regulation and asked for them for input. They supplied him with their input, and there was nothing wrong with that. One of the members not only gave her recommendations to the chairman, but she also emailed all the other members saying, here's where I disagree with this draft policy and procedure, and I request we have an open meeting to discuss it. And they determined that this one member was in violation. The other members would have been in violation if they had responded to any other member other than the chairman who requested the input.
In that case, it was I don't know how many members of the board, but there were several.
Yes. More.
So that the quorum was more than two.
Right.
And what the chairman did is send out that request with instructions to make your comments and get it back to me, the chairman.
As long as we understand it, say I come up with a proposed change in the lodging house regulation, and I sent a copy to both members asking for their input into my draft. If Paul sends it back to me saying, here's my input, and if Gene sends it back to me but sends a copy to Paul about what he thinks of it, he's in violation.
That's exactly what it says.
Yes, that's a little broader than I thought it was.
It isn't about you discussing it or Paul discussing it. It's about, is the board discussing it?
Well, they discussed it, but the thing is, they made no decision. It was a draft, and it was specifically noted by the member that was found in violation that they requested to have this discussed at an open meeting. And they just said that the mistake that was made shouldn't have been sent to the other members. Her recommendations regarding the draft. I mean, I think it's pretty narrow.
Lastly, the board discussed a transition taking place in Barnstable Village with the old general store's new manager.
One issue that I think you're all aware that about 6 months ago we were notified by the ABC that the Barnstable news store was being operated by someone other than the licensed entity that was approved. The police department picked that license up, and we gave them the operator over there instructions that if they could demonstrate that they had some legal claim to this license, to come forward, and we'll put it on the agenda. Let's bring it before the local licensing authority, and then send it to Boston for confirmation. That hasn't happened. Apparently what's happened is that corporation that was licensed was dissolved several years ago. And somehow the property got transferred, and people kept renewing it as if it did exist but didn't exist. I guess that doesn't really matter at this particular point. So we're now at a point where we need to clean this up.
The authority ultimately decided to schedule a show cause hearing for the store at its next meeting on December 5th. With Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Colvin.